everyone. I am Adriana Winkler. I am a data protection officer for Reyes Holdings, conglomerate in the United States.
Hi everyone, I'm Liat Hayun. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Eureka Security, a seed-stage startup helping organizations protect sensitive data in the cloud.
Hello everyone, my name is Gregory Wilson, Chief Information Security Officer at Putnam Investments. It's an asset management firm.
Hey everyone, I'm Manny Hart, the CEO of Opus. It's a while-backed cloud security remediation company.
Hello, I'm Frank Kim. I'm the CISO-in-residence at YL Ventures and a fellow at the SANS Institute.
Great, well thank you very much. It's really great to have all of you here and great to be working with many of you here on the panel and be very familiar with your business and views on a daily basis. But let's talk to the audience here. Talk about a little bit about security budgets. We were on stage, must have been an hour and a half ago, talking about that. I was saying security budgets are flat. Some people on the panel were saying cybersecurity budgets are decreasing. I'd love to get your view, given that you deal with that every day from the CISO side, from the entrepreneur side, from the advising side. So what's happening to those budgets and how is that changing the behavior of buyers and entrepreneurs? Anybody want to start?
Yeah, sure, I can go. So I do think that 2023, obviously, it's not that the budget is being decreased, it's more being how you can use it more efficient, let's say, to do more with less, let's say, right? So maybe it's not decreasing. Yes, we are calculating more to see, how we can fund which parts are really important to invest and what is really put us at risk that we want to put the money there or the budget, right? Of course, also from an FTE perspective and also from a tooling and security platforms. So it's definitely, we just want to think more kind of carefully about where we want to put the money and how it's helping us, the companies, to be more secure.
Well, I can add that I think it's all about quantifying, minimizing the risk, and then, of course, you can be more accurate where you're going to spend your budget, for these tools and whatever you want to acquire. And also, you have to look back at your inventory and say, okay, I have many assets. So it's a matter of deciding which one, or vendor consolidation sometimes. So budget, it matters a lot. So I think risk should be a factor in deciding how to spend the budget.
Liat?
Yeah, from the entrepreneur's perspective, we definitely feel a higher need to show to prove out the ROI, to make sure that the return on the investment that security teams are making with us is providing them a significant value add on top of their existing stack or instead of other tools. And then I think the challenge also provides us with an opportunity because especially here on this stage, as early stage startups, we can work together with the teams, with the security teams to better address their specific needs, which allows us to give much more dedicated products that help address the unique challenges they have. And then another opportunity it presents is that we can show other benefits of the product that can support the decision. So for example, for us, protecting data in the cloud can also be done by reducing unnecessary data in the cloud and reducing cost. So by showing that proof of value, we can arm them with additional justification for using products like ours.
Yeah, for me, actually my budget has increased in additional personnel, so I think...
Be careful with what you're going to drag to your do.
So in many instances, I have colleagues where their budget is decreasing, so it really depends on, a lot of it is relationship, and a good relationship with your CFO will go a long ways in helping your budget increase. But the other thing is having a clear roadmap of what you want to do and what you want to achieve. I think one of the big things from a vendor side is it's really coming in, being very firm and tight on what you have, know what you offer, what you're good at, and be the first to admit, you know what, that's really not an area where we play, and don't try to be all things to all people. But I think in many instances you'll find organizations, even if it's an unbudgeted item, if that CISO goes back and says, hey, this is something we have to have, they'll find the money in the budget to get it.
Maybe back a little bit to the entrepreneur perspective, I would say two things. One, if you're solving a real problem, and there's a lot of real problems still out there, there's still an opportunity. We are seeing a lot of companies still being very successful and growing while innovating. This is, as Liat says, exactly the time to innovate and go to new places and solve real problems. The second side of this, from a more practical side, we are also business owners in a sense, right? We all instrumented to business to understand the reality now is about doing more with less, right? So a lot of the thoughts, all the conversations we have with CISOs is really about how can we help them do more with less and actually use the idea, the notion that the budget is frozen or not growing as rapidly to provide more value for the organization in the places where the pain is actually existing, which is more around lack of budget, lack of cost, lack of manpower, and stuff like that. And I think there's a huge opportunities for startups in that area.
You know, budget is definitely one of the key resources, but I also like to think not just in terms of the cost of the different solutions in our own internal portfolio, but also one of the big resources is the people, the talent on our team. And whenever I think about my entire security budget, I try to think about it of what percentage am I allocating to more innovative or cutting-edge approaches. In different organizations, that might have been 10%, 20%, where I know that perhaps I want to invest in a newer capability, something that's hasn't been tried before, but at the same time, I know I've got to get my team's buy-in to be able to want to have time to be able to spend on those cutting-edge capabilities. So that's a balance in terms of kind of the cost trade-off and the corresponding innovation, and sometimes being able to get new capabilities at even perhaps an earlier stage or at a discounted price. So that's kind of how I think about it in terms of managing the overall portfolio as technology changes occur over time.
Great. Adriana, you've seen it. There's a flood of products, security products and services in the market. There's so many startups. Half of them are in the Wild Ventures portfolio. No, I'm kidding. But so many startups. How do you manage the number of security products in the stack? How do you prioritize it all?
I have two approaches. The first one, of course, is risk and vendor consolidation. Sometimes is needed, you know, because you have like different processes with different tools, like spreadsheet here, another tool over here. So, and then things can get a little bit crazy. So, and another thing, as a data protection officer myself, one thing, this is a different approach, but I think it's very, very important. So when you map all the data in your company, you can not only have all the data flow, everything like in your hands, but also you are able to identify unnecessary tools, duplicated processes, you know. So when you do a data mapping, actually, you are helping the CISO in your organization in finding out, okay, I don't need this tool anymore. I can consolidate the process with one single tool. So it's very important. So risk quantification is one thing, you know, so I can, you know, okay, I can choose a specific tool for this process. And the other thing is like you have to see what you have inside your organization, and then you can decide. And of course, I need to look at my budget. You know, budget is very important, you know, in this when deciding.
That's great. Great. Do you have another view on that, or pretty much the same? Great.
Yeah, so I would say for me, we do an annual risk assessment in Q4 of every year, and that really guides our technology spend. And so to be honest with you, you could have the greatest product in the world. If it's not an area that's really where we see it as an issue, it's probably not going to come up on my roadmap. And so a lot of it really revolves around your risk assessment. I think you have to really understand your business, understand the risks, understand where you are, and also understand where you're going, because that really should be driving your investment, ensuring that you can meet the needs of the organization.
I'm curious about the entrepreneur perspective on this topic. Maybe Liat and Manny can tell us.
Yeah, I wanted to say that coming from product management, I always say, you know, you have to start with a problem. The feature you're building to address that problem, that's the means to the end, which is addressing the issue, addressing the challenge, as opposed to creating, you know, products that have shiny new features on them, but don't really address any of the concerns, any of the risk that the organization experiences. So we focus on working with organizations to better understand what challenges they have today, what they view as risky within their environment, what changed that might require new focus. and then make sure our product addresses that need, as opposed to coming in with a shiny demo, showing them how beautiful the UI is, and then not ending up addressing any of their concerns.
Yeah, and I would say for us, we see about the same, right? I think early stage startup is about obsessing with the customer, resonating what he has, understanding their challenges, and really helping to solve it, creating the trust you need to successfully work with that customer. And we try to do that with the customers we work with. I think that the challenge here creates more of the, if I look a little bit at the industry, there's a challenge here about messaging, even when I try to sell, right? When I look a little bit from the seller perspective. There are so many products, so now there's a lot of focus we now start to create around how do the people here that buy these products even understand what we do. That helps you really, really define, laser focus what you do, so everyone can even understand what you do. And also, a lot of the time, forces you to create the product that they can test for themselves and be much more quicker to get to the value and to understand what you're doing and apply that for themselves.
Great. So both of Liat's Eureka and Many's Opus are cloud security companies. Frank, I was wondering, what's your take? Do you think that the cloud offering is sufficient in a world that still has on-prem?
Yeah, it's very interesting. You know, from what I see, every organization, every large enterprise is multi-cloud, either by choice or by chance. Either they've had a specific strategy to go multiple cloud providers, or it's happened by accident because of a different business unit or acquisition or some various reason. Coupled with that, as Yoav, you were just saying, is every large enterprise, for the most part, also has an on-premise infrastructure. So it's definitely multi-cloud. And as a result, you know, security teams are really, one, struggling with trying to figure out how to understand the cloud, wrap their arms around it, even understand the cloud native services themselves. But then number two, to figure out how to secure them using kind of best available solutions, whether it be from the cloud providers or, because of this multi-cloud world, trying to figure it out across both on-premise and multi-cloud environments, and use those best practices to try to improve the work of the security team overall. And so I really think, yeah, this is why there is such a focus on various cloud solutions, because that innovation, we're at the point of maturity of cloud adoption, where, yeah, those solutions aren't necessarily all there in one bucket.
And are Eureka and Opus multi-cloud, and was that from day one? And how do you guys feel about that whole topic?
Yeah, sure. So I think when you decide as an entrepreneur whether you do multi-cloud or not, it really depends on your target market, as kind of Frank alluded to. And I think if you're looking to sell to large enterprises, you should be with the expectation they're going to have multi-cloud, because that's a reality or necessity. So I think for us, it was always obvious that we need to support. If you're looking to solve the real problems, we're going to need to solve all of those surfaces. As we go on into SMB or mid-market, then where it's a little bit more cost constraints, a little bit more technically, less technically savvy, maybe a single cloud approach would be good. But for large enterprise, you almost have to think about multi-cloud from day one.
Yeah, I definitely agree with many here. It's, the only part I disagree with is that even smaller organizations tend to have more than one cloud. It's surprising how flexible that environment is and how easy it is to create. So those organizations sometimes have more trial and error, meaning that they tried out one service, they moved to another one, and they're now running in multiple clouds as well. And especially from our perspective, since we want to protect data no matter where it is, it has to be across all clouds and in the future other environments as well. So you have to have that guiding star when building the product.
So let's switch gears here a little bit. I'd love to actually ask Yaron and Greg specifically, and anybody else who wants to comment. So last year we witnessed something very, very different in security with the trial of Joe Sullivan, and you know, him being a CISO at Uber and being convicted and potentially facing jail time. So that was a shocker. I'm wondering, as CISOs, how did that make you feel? Has that changed anything about how you feel about the role? Any other thoughts? And maybe Frank could also comment after Yaron and Greg.
Yeah, so definitely, obviously, you know, I think it was a shock to all the CISOs around the globe. We definitely kind of raised the flag, right, to legal, from insurance, and all of this kind of, you know, angles to see how we can protect ourselves, right, in case something like that would happen to ours. So it is an interesting case. I do think they took it to the extreme, to be honest, right, in order to show that You need to take ownership, you need to take responsibility, and you need to deal with the security issues that you have in the organization. So it was kind of to show you, we are here, you need to do your job, but from our side, we obviously need to make sure we can justify or report stuff as we need it, from regulation perspective or from legal, institutes. So we have to make sure we have the balance that we understand that what is really matter, we need to report about it, we need to be honest about it, but we also need to make sure we can, the company can protect us, right, as an employee eventually for the company, because we are doing our best to make it secure and protected.
Yeah, I would say the case was pretty shocking. I think one of the first things, once it was announced, once everyone got over the kind of shock of what happened, first thing they did is email the general counsel, say, I'm covered by the DNO, right? Once you go beyond that, then you call your insurance broker to make sure you have your own liability insurance. And it really reinforced the notion that you want to make sure that you're following all company procedures. And it's not to say that he did not. Because I think his case was somewhat of an anomaly. He was an attorney that also held a unusual position within the company, within the legal department. So most CISOs don't fall in that category. So it was somewhat of a unicorn, not to steal an investment term. But it was pretty unusual, the situation he was in. But it did remind many of us to go back to make sure that we have a clear path of how we go about responding to incidents, make sure we follow the rules to the law, and make sure you turn it over to the legal department at the appropriate time. So let executive management make those decisions so you don't find yourself on the hook.
Yeah, and you mentioned a key thing there in terms of making sure that you've got executive and director level insurance. And unfortunately, it still remains the fact across the industry that the CISO, even though there's a C in the title, is not seen at the same level as the other C-level executives in the organization. Many decades ago, we saw this kind of same evolution with the CIO, eventually now becoming a business executive, and we're still at the early stages of the CISO being seen as that business executive, understanding the business crown jewels, what's most important to the organization to drive business by protecting the company overall. And this is, this overarching theme here is kind of related to this, is we need to make sure that we are part of those executive conversations and, right, as seen as a key member of the executive team, not just invited to sit at the table when something occurs, but have that permanent seat at the table, which, broadly speaking, not having executive insurance, for example, is an indication of that. So for any CISO that is thinking about taking that next opportunity, yeah, those are the types of things that, I'd highly suggest you make sure that are in the contract.
And how about the entrepreneurs here? Have you noticed any change in attitude or behavior or expectation of your products since the Joe Sullivan case?
So I don't know if it's a direct impact, but connecting to what Frank said, we do see CISOs being more involved in the business itself, taking a larger seat at the table or being closer to the table, and then allowing themselves from that position to not just be reactive to what's happening in the organization, but rather be proactive and gain, alongside their ownership and responsibilities, also have the mandate to be able to push towards changes that would allow them to fulfill their position the best way possible and address needs before they even come up. So that's definitely something we've seen.
I would add, I think it's hard to say if it's tied directly to that, right? But I would say there's always been this need for visibility and reporting across organizations, and I think as part of this, maybe from other reasons as well, as part of the fact that security is becoming much more cross-organization. It's become much more distributed in nature. So I think that breeds the need for some new type of visibility and reporting that actually spans the entire organization. And I think we definitely see a renewed focus on that. Whether it ties directly, it's hard to tell.
Great. Greg, Adriana, Yaron, let's talk a little bit about the talent shortage in security. It's so hard to find good talent, and then it's so hard to retain the talent. We know there's a lot of turnover and churn in security, especially SOC and other sort of very intense environments. How do you guys deal with this issue in your environment? And if you can't find people, how do you compensate for that?
Yeah, I can say that we did started a program which I think it's really, really effective, which basically we're taking graduate students from the best university in the world, and we kind of train them, we're educating them. Obviously it's a big curve, right, because it takes you more time, but eventually they want to stay in the company for a longer time, and they are really, really good because they have a good talent. They just need the education and the training, and it's becoming a very interesting point to get the new kind of talents that are so missing around the globe, right? And we are trying all the time to hire, and we're always in the backlog trying to fill out new that are moving on. So those new ones are very interesting, and I think everyone should adopt it.
I have a view that we have talent. Some companies, sometimes they don't know where to find them. It's one thing. Sometimes it's self-imposed. So for example, you have talent inside your companies. Sometimes you have to look in your company and say, hey, I have this IT guy or this admin, network admin. Oh, I can get him trained, the person trained, and then put him in a cyber position, for example. And also, there is another thing about retaining talent. Some companies, especially large companies, they don't have the approach to retain the talent. So they spend money trying to find a talent, and when they finally can get that person to fill that position, they don't have the capability of retaining the talent. Sometimes the HR problem, because we have seen that. So we have, for example, we need to address with HR, hey, we have people leaving the company, and why is that? And they know the problem, but they don't know what to do. And also, another thing that I have been noticing, like for the past 2 years or even more, it's about diversity. Companies sometimes, they tend to hire this exact same type of people, and why not having a diverse team? So you have people with different backgrounds, different cultures, and then this adds so much more to the company, So there is like many ways to address this issue, my opinion is we don't have a talent shortage. We have difficulty in not finding, but also where to find. We have to look, everywhere, and it's going to be easier, and then we can just fulfill the position in the company. It doesn't matter, it's a small company or a large company, it's the same thing.
Great. Yeah, for me, we're doing a couple of things. Well, we're doing a lot of things. One, you have to pay people properly. You really have to pay market salary. And it's having a conversation with our HR team that, hey, we can't look at what the salary was 2 years ago. The market has moved on. That's the first thing. We are also investing heavily in training, making sure people can use the latest technology, SANS courses, et cetera, because oftentimes it's something that security practitioners are not allowed to do, go outside for external training. Real big on cross-training, letting people get involved in projects that they want to be involved in where they have an interest. We're also growing teams in India. And finally, we have this program called Technology Associates where we train college, kids directly out of college. So we're kind of taking a multi-pronged approach to the issue, but it still ends up being a problem. For me, I find on average, it takes me 8 or 9 months to hire someone.
And how can the cybersecurity vendors and startups help in this area, maybe automation?
Yeah, sure. So I would say, I think about that in 2 ways. The first one is, there's already existing workforce. How can we make sure they spend their time doing what they actually need to be doing? So anything that we could take away from them, and the vendor can help reduce their workload and make sure their efforts are focused where it's actually necessary, is going to be a key component that us as vendors, through automation, have to do. The second way I would think about it is, and I think we've kind of accustomed to automation, is something that the customer defines for himself, right? A lot of this automation we kind of rolled off to the customer to build it. I think as an evolution of this, especially in these times, it's an onus on the vendor to bring their knowledge in and help actually drive the success, drive the improvement, drive the process with the customers as well to actually improve them. And I think the combination of knowledge and automation itself is probably the best way we can help customers really drive up and do more with less and deal with this.
Great. I have a question for you, Frank. So it's often, I mean, it's observed and known that to sell a security product to a customer, you don't just have to convince the CISO to buy the product, but rather there's usually a bunch of other stakeholders that you need to win over. Oftentimes it's the CFO. Many times it's other parts of the organization. IT, DevOps, whatever it is. In your experience, how important is it for security vendors to win over these other stakeholders, maybe offer additional features that don't necessarily, that are not necessarily geared towards security, but other parts of the organization to win a deal? What's your view on that?
Yeah, you know, over the years, I've seen a number of well-performing security teams over time slowly start to degrade and slowly start to disintegrate. Because maybe the CISO leaves, maybe some other key people leave, maybe some other team members leave. And, well, why do I mention that? Why is that a problem? That's an indication that that team and the corresponding processes were maybe held together a little bit by the force of will of those key people driving security activities forward. So by extension, that means that there wasn't a security-aware and risk-aware culture that was built into the organization. So how do you go about doing that? Well, the modern, successful CISO needs to understand, as Yoav, you were pointing out, who are those key stakeholders, whether it be legal, whether it be HR, finance, the business units, whether it be DevOps and engineering, and build relationships with those various parts of the org and build security responsibility and practices into those parts of the org. So if the modern CISO is really doing their job appropriately, fortunately, hopefully, some of these relationships are already there, and by extension, the new capabilities enabled by different products can leverage, right, some of those existing natural relationships and workflows that should be there that would make security more a part of the normal culture.
So maybe also the rest of the panel, what are some other ways in which startups can gain trust with large enterprises? How can they, I mean, it's so hard to win over a big customer. And especially the CISOs here, I know have adopted products from startups. So Yaron, maybe we'll start with you. What are the best tactics for startups to employ?
So I think first one is obviously, yes, as they mentioned as well, is the problem, right? That we actually need something that needs to be solved, right? And we're trying also to fight the game, but we're trying to solve the problem eventually. So this is obviously the first thing. The second thing is, I think, it's not only us to convince, as we just discussed, it's not only us, the security team, it's also the DevOps, the IT, that we need to work together, that eventually we are solving them a problem as well. You know, if it's by automation, if it's by efficiency, and eventually we are helping all the company as a team to be better, efficient, automated, much faster, and we can scale it up, right? So it's kind of solving a problem to a lot of teams in the company that helps eventually everyone to play the game. And this is why you want to invest or to buy the product, that we can solve a bigger problem that we have.
Yeah, I would say you want to quickly try to move from transaction to trusted advisor. One of the things that I find is that really ruins the relationship is really pushy vendors. And I have an easy analogy that I tell my kids. When you push, you only push one direction away. You want to really engage with the customer, try to understand what their problem is, and position your solution as a way of solving it and simplifying their operation. Don't try to be more than what you are. Really be laser focused on what you can do and be brutally honest in what your product can't do. Because as soon as you lose their trust, it's really hard to regain it back.
It's amazing. It's almost like I had two things to say, and there's exactly two. And I think for me, the concept even of selling is not about selling your product. It's about understanding the customer's pain. So if you do that well, then I think that's a very good first step to kind of establish that trust, understand the pain, and also try to draw the plan to how to get him to solve that pain. It's at the early stage. Sometimes that conversation is a little more complex. You know, it might be some challenges on the road. But can he trust you to take him from point A to point B and solve the problem that you understood very well that is? The second part is super important, that's transparency. Can you really be outright with them? If you don't do that today, tell them you don't do that today. You're going to come down the road. But if you establish transparency and resonate with their pain, I think that's how trust comes about.
Those are just beautiful closing words. Time is up. I'd like to thank all my panelists for this great panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.